Can we check if the
Namaste. Good afternoon. On behalf of Flow Hyderabad, I, Honorary Secretary Priya Gasdar, extend a warm welcome to all of you present here this afternoon. There is little doubt that 2021 will be a tough year as COVID-19 tracks an uncertain trajectory. But 2020, more than ever, has brought home the fact that brands have to embrace accountability to environment, to people, to society in general, in order to survive and thrive. Today's discussion on sustainable living in the new normal, female founders taking the lead, will examine and interpret the winning strategies that can be adopted by women entrepreneurs in the fashion and jewelry industries to build sustainable solutions for the long time. To start the session, I request Chairperson Usharani Manne to deliver her welcome address.
Thank you, Priya. Namaste. Good afternoon to Professor Kiran Kuchi, Ms. Juzana Gombosova, Dr. Mudrika Khandelwal, Dr. Surya Kumar, the entire team from IIT Hyderabad. Just a minute. Just give me 1 minute. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, Miss Jujana Gombasova, Dr. Mudrika Khandelwal, Dr. Surya Kumar, the entire team from IIT Hyderabad, past presidents, past chairs, Pan India Flow members, and viewers, and a very happy new year. I hope 2021 will bring the world some succor. Sustainability is a shared value. It's a collective responsibility that all of us need to feel accountable for. Not just corporates, not just the social advocates. It is on each of us to understand and accept the responsibility. Because the biggest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. If we can figure out the triple bottom line, that is the social, economic, and environmental measures needed to sustain a healthy earth, we could try reversing at least some of the damage we have caused. In today's discussion, our erudite speakers will lay bare some hard facts and solutions that can help us adopt more sustainable business practices. As a responsible human and corporates, this is an ideal we should all aspire to without exception. My thanks to the team at IIT Hyderabad for designing this exclusive event for us. Coming to Flow Hyderabad, we made long strides in our social outreach efforts in the last couple of months. Under the National Incubation Cell Initiative, the VHub incubation cohort is ready to be launched in this month. Flow Incubator at CIE Hyderabad organized two-day idea opportunity validation boot camps and 3 BIS talks. A pitch day was also organized for bootcamp graduates where they presented their business proposals to potential investors. The activities of the Flow Incubator at our NutriHub IIMR kickstarted with a talk on business opportunities for women in the millet industry. I'm glad to say we have had pan-India inquiries to avail these services. We are organizing a virtual workshop on cooking with millets tomorrow in association with the IIMR. Under FMC's Mentor-Mentee program, we were successful in mapping 9 mentors and 7 mentees with the help of NMC, 4 of who took the Flow Virginia Tech Mentorship Development Program. We conducted a 1-month micro accelerator cum mentorship program through Flow Incubator at CIE and are in the advanced stages of planning for another micro accelerator with IIIT Hyderabad. As part of our Knowledge Lab series, we organized a 4-part social media for business series covering Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter for our member entrepreneurs. It attracted overwhelming participation from Flow members across all chapters. In skilling for grassroots women, we organized a free 4-day training session in vermicompost and manufacture of natural pesticides for 60 women farmers. There is an overwhelming ask for another session. The planning is for which underway. After tasting 100% of success with our first round of skilling and placements program for urban youth under the DDU GKY program, we are scouting for candidates for the second round due to start next month. For the Flow assisted brand of Cherial Craft Tirumani, we developed business worth 3 lakhs plus and helped them collaborate with online portal WeaveSmart and Indie Roots. Their installations at IKP Knowledge Park in Genome Valley and the lobby at VS Majestic Hotel were coordinated by our team. As part of our mental health campaign, Reach Out, we organized a talk on changing our thoughts and thereby our reality in the last week of December. Coming up is a talk with our health minister, Sri Etal Rajendra, on January 29th, and the 4-day annual retreat to Atmantan Wellness Resort near Pune. To sum it up, I can only say COVID has not dampened our spirit or sense of purpose. Our blueprint for the coming months is in place, and we are looking forward to achieving our goals as per schedule. Now, I hand it over to Priya to take this session forward. Thank you so much. Over to you, Priya.
Thank you, Usha. Before we continue, a gentle reminder to all those in the Zoom room to keep your audio and video feeds on mute, especially since we have a large audience and an intricate program today. Please leave your questions for our speakers in the chat box. We'll take them up at the end of the session. Moving on, we are honored to have Dean of Research and Development at IIT Hyderabad, Professor Kiran Kochi, with us today. Before I invite him to speak, here's a short introduction about him. Professor Kiran Kochi holds an MS and PhD in electrical engineering from the University of Texas at Arlington, USA. During his stint with Nokia Research, he contributed to the development of a global system for mobile communication and long-term evolution systems. He then moved to Center of Excellence in Wireless Technology, where he led fourth-generation research and standardization efforts. He was also an adjunct faculty with the Department of Electrical Engineering, IIT Madras. He holds more than 20 US patents. His current research interests include physical layer algorithms and the development of prototypes for fifth-generation systems. It's my honor indeed to invite the very illustrious Professor Kiran to deliver his opening remarks.
Thank you, Madam. I will be brief in my comments. I would like to first offer and explain the facilities we have in IIT Hyderabad, one of the top-notch institutes in the country and an emerging institute. So today, we have more than 2,500 population in IIT Hyderabad campus. I'm happy to say that a large chunk of them are researchers, apart from, running our academics. We have a substantial strength in almost all aspects of engineering, including design and liberal arts programs. We'll be happy to support these various initiatives, especially for women entrepreneurs, with all the different programs we have in the ITIC Foundation, and also the upcoming research park at IIT Hyderabad with 1 lakh square feet. It's an excellent campus for entrepreneurs to start working on their various projects. We have faculty and students, very young faculty, and our students are also very young. A lot of energy in the campus. We'll be very happy to support you in whatever way we can. In terms of funding, my colleague Dr. Surya will explain you, the programs at ITIC Foundation and at the research park. He is responsible for that. So post-COVID, I'm happy to see that we're able to run this event online very effectively, thanks to all the great communication platforms that we have. We have this Zoom. We are using it on mobile communication systems, Wi-Fi, and all kinds of different tools and facilities we have to get our work going without interruption. Especially IITH is fully functional in online mode. So again, IIT Hyderabad will be glad to support in whatever form you bring the proposals to us. With that, I would like to close my remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Kiran, and thank you for the assurance that you'll be able to help us with whatever our ask is at IIT Hyderabad. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Our keynote speaker today is Zuzana Gombazova, co-founder Malai Biomaterials. Zuzana is a material researcher and designer from Slovakia. Her background is in fashion and textile design, and she has collected work experiences in Czech Republic, Turkey, and London. She is a graduate from MA Material Futures, where she specialized in working with bacterial cellulose. Since 2015, she has been living in India, where she co-founded Malai, a startup that develops materials based on bacterial cellulose grown on water from mature coconuts. Malai won the Circular Design Challenge Award and a PETA India Award for Best Vegan Leather in 2020. I request Zuzana to share her views on the very interesting topic of sustainability and design. Over to you, Zuzana.
Hello, thank you very much for your introduction. I just realized my introduction actually cut out a few of my slides from presentation, but I hope you don't mind me repeating some of the facts. It's a pleasure to be here with you on the event that you're hosting, and I guess I'll just give you some introduction on the problems that the field that I am working within is facing currently, not only because of the COVID crisis. The problems have been there long before. And not to be too pessimistic, I will give you a few examples of how these problems are being challenged and solved in many cases, to illustrate that there is still a lot of hope and of course a lot of work ahead of us. So I have a little presentation prepared for you. I don't know if I can share my screen with you. How shall we do it?
Pranay, can you help her share the screen?
Yeah, you just press share screen in the
Yeah?
center of your, yeah,
Okay.
just do that.
Good. Okay, it's coming up. Sorry, just a second. Not quite sure. I'll try doing it again. Okay. I am not sure why am I not entering full screen. Sorry about that, but can you see the slides?
Yes, we can, Susanna.
Okay, then
Yes.
then I'll continue in this way. Hopefully it will be fine. So I will be talking to you, or the topic of my presentation today is bringing circularity into fashion. To tell you a little bit more about who am I, although you already got an introduction, I come from Slovakia, which is a small country in Central Europe. And I am a graduate of fashion and textile design initially. I later did my MA studies at MA Material Futures, which is a master's course at Central St. Martin's in London. And I worked as a fashion designer and material designer for several years across several countries, Czech Republic, United Kingdom, Turkey, and later India. You know, I always describe myself as a little bit of a multidisciplinary person. My background is in art and design, and that's where I drive most of my methodology from. But for the past 2 years, I have been also an entrepreneur, which I have to admit has been one of the most challenging tasks for me, which requires juggling somewhat 10 plates at the same time, sometimes using only one hand. So it's been quite a ride. What do I do in India? This is a brief illustration of where you would usually find me. You would find me in Kerala, in a place called Chertala near Kochi, and called Malai. But the reason I can get how to reincorporate some of these materials back into the factories or how to reuse them. So that's been maybe the first sort of circular economy project that I undertook. To tell you a little more about the state of fashion that we are currently in, for a long time, for majority of 20th century, maybe even at the beginning of 21st century, the way we understood fashion was a straight line, which means fashion has adopted a principle which is based on 3 words: take, make, and waste. In brief, it means that we take resources, we manufacture fibers. From the fibers, we manufacture clothing. We then market and sell the clothing, and the clothing is used, worn over time. There's also some material care involved. Of course, we are washing our clothes. And after usage stage of the clothes, the normal disposal route would be the clothes go to landfill or they are incinerated, which has brought fashion to our fashion industry to an array of challenges. And we can say that today there are several topics that are being discussed within fashion. First of them is undoubtedly fashion supply chain and the transparency within these change. You might have noticed in Who Make My Clothes or Fashion Revolution organizations who are inquiring into the ethical state of working conditions of workers within supply chain and manufacturing units for the fashion brands. There is, of course, sustainability, which has been discussed for over 2 decades now. As we know, fashion industry is the second most polluting industry after oil. In the midst of the COVID crisis, there's been quite a lot coming up, especially in fashion industry. Experts actually describe the COVID-19 crisis as the biggest economic contraction since World War II, and this has caused enormous ruptures in the supply chains of fashion industry. It has caused joblessness and financial hardships for many workers. And also connected to that, but already initiated before, there's a change of consumer within the fashion industry. We are now dealing with a segment of consumers described as millennials, and this type of customers prefer little or make little different purchasing choices. There's a change in the way we interact with fashion and with the retail experience because over the course of recent years, there's a need for digitalization. We no longer only, or especially during the COVID crisis, we can't go to shops, and the experience of shopping is changing. We no longer go there to get the experience of shopping and choosing and spending time there. Everything is digital, and that's one of the platforms where fashion industry has been backwards for many years. But I will not talk about all these points. Of course, today I would like to talk about sustainability, because that's something that I've been trying to address with my practice as well. Hence, sustainability first. It is said that 60 to 80% of the product impact on sustainability lies in the choices made at the design and development stage. And this has been kind of an eye-opening statement for me when I was still working as a fashion and textile designers, because I observed this as well during my work. You know, many times there would be overproduction. The materials that were chosen for many of designs did consider no environmental impact. You know, many times it was just simply a matter of price. And that's when I realized, you know, in order to make a better impact for the environment, perhaps I can start from myself and design in a better way. Sustainability is also something that has been increasingly discussed over last decade, perhaps, but sometimes I have to say that's all that we are doing. So we definitely live in times when we need to act, not only talk about it. To mention some of the issues that we are currently going through when it comes to sustainability issues in fashion industry, we cannot not mention waste. According to the studies, roughly 50% of the total fabric used in the fashion industry is wasted. It's not only about manufacturing and post-consumer waste, but also washing clothes can release a lot of microfibers. It is estimated it's released 500,000 tons of microfibers into the ocean every year, which is equivalent of 50 billion plastic bottles. And an estimated 92 million tons of waste is created annually from the fashion industry itself. Why do garments go to landfill? There are many reasons. There is dead stock, there is overproduction of the clothes. We often have insufficient recycling infrastructures. And also the responsibility for waste production is often not forced enough upon big manufacturers. And as a result of that, today there is less than 1% of clothing which is actually being recycled. Coming to the second issue, most burning issue connected with fashion industry, but of course not only fashion industry, is pollution. I think many of us can notice the pollution whenever we approach larger manufacturing units. It is quite obvious in many places. And according to the studies, apparel industry actually accounts to 10% of global carbon emissions. It's generating greenhouse gases due to energy used during its production, manufacturing, transportation of millions of garments purchased every year. Because fashion industry in many cases is like a very crazy, circus. And it's incredibly complex and intertwined network. The fashion industry is also responsible for 20% of all industrial water pollution worldwide. Another issue connected with sustainability in the fashion industry is the choice of materials. As I mentioned, very often price is the only criteria considered in the design process, and therefore we don't look at the full life cycle of the material and product made out of it. Plastic is actually very widespread, and fabrics such as polyester or nylon are one of the most used for the construction of garments. It is estimated that plastic is found in an estimated 60% of the garments. And producing polyester also releases 2 to 3 times more carbon emissions than cotton. But we also know it actually doesn't break down in the ocean. Due to all the time and resources it takes to make polyester, and it never being able to revert to a state that can contribute to any natural nutrient cycles, polyester can be considered energy intensive with no net gain. Hence, you can really see that the only gain from polyester many times is for the brand that manufactures it. That's synthetic materials. Very often we think that natural materials are better, and of course there is the biodegradability advantage. However, we also have to consider resources that are used for growing the crops, and processes that are used for making them into fiber, fabric, and then garment. And in midst of that, cotton is considered the world's dirty scrub because it uses 16% of the world's pesticides, not mentioning its use of water. Consumption behavior has largely contributed to the state of unsustainability within fashion industry. This is a graph made by Ellen MacArthur Foundation study, which is showing you that we have been increasing the units of production by double from 2000 till 2015. However, the clothing utilization has actually went down, which means we are buying more but using the clothes for less time. Now, this is a little older graph. If we would look at the graphs maybe that of the consumption of the 2020, the numbers would be a little different. According to the latest studies done in fashion industry, the retail has entered a bit of a crisis because the only field or the only groups of garments that have seen an increase in purchase have been home clothes and pajamas. So 2020 has seen a rise of home clothing, but unfortunately nothing much more than that. Use of resources is another problem that we are seeing in the fashion industry. Fashion industry is the second largest consumer of water worldwide, which is which is connected with the way we manufacture materials mainly. And fashion industry also uses the equivalent of 12,402 Olympic swimming pools of oil each year. There's always a word in the area which fashion industry and the brands in it often use to give us hope, which is recycling. And however, adopting recycling practices is important and definitely will improve the state of fashion industry sustainability wise. We also have to use at the effectiveness of recycling processes in place currently. And then there are, of course, many materials that are produced from, plastic materials, which we currently can't even recycle, such as polyurethane or PVC. For me personally, one of the gravest examples of how we mistreat our resources for the sake of fashion has been the state of RLC. RLC has been up until 1960s the world's fourth largest inland body of water. It used to cover around 26,000 square miles. Things changed, however, a little when Uzbekistan became part of Soviet Union. And Soviet Union, heading with Stalin, decided to turn Central Asian republics into giant crop plantations. However, no consideration was given to the fact that the climate is extremely arid there. And as such place, it's really ill-suited for growing such a thirsty crop, such as cotton. And so the Soviets undertook one of the most ambitious engineering projects in the world. And they started hand digging thousands of miles of irrigation canals to channel the water from Amu Darya and Sir Darya, which are the two rivers, bringing water to the RLC into the surrounding desert. When they added even more irrigation canals in the 1960s, the camel's back, as they say, literally broke. And suddenly the system was no longer sustainable. The saddest thing about this whole issue is, they knew what they were doing, but I guess what they didn't realize is the full range of ecological consequences and the rapidity with which the sea would vanish. You can see in the images that in the first pictures in 1980s, there's already shrunk area of the RLC. In the early 2000 years, 2000, the area of RLC has almost disappeared. Not only, of course, this doesn't only concern the disappearance of water. This caused basically a destruction to all the communities of fishermen that used to live around the area. The ones who survived have to face a very aggressive salt storms, which are happening in the area. And because cultivation of cotton is such a large consumer of pesticides, the entire area registers rates 25 times higher as the world average when it comes to esophageal cancer, and tuberculosis is also a problem. That's a sad part about how fashion industry and its ill uses of resources affected the entire area, and unfortunately we no longer have much of the RLC. To sum up the main issues of sustainability within fashion industry, we are facing overproduction. We have quite ineffective recycling systems, and in many places the infrastructure is not even there. We overuse non-biodegradable materials for products which short lifespan, and with questionable disposal route. We have ineffective use of resources. We very often use toxic compounds in manufacturing processes of textiles and garments. And we have consumption patterns that promote throwaway culture. These problems have been accumulating for years, and until kind of the majority of the industry realized we are indeed in big trouble, and several initiatives have been formed in order to transform fashion industry and make it more sustainable. The term circular fashion has been first coined in 2014 in Sweden. However, we can say that it takes a lot of inspiration from the way our ancestors might have approached resources and garments and the way they use them. However, these days we have to apply it for large-scale industries. Circular fashion is defined as a regenerative system in which garments are circulated for as long as their maximum value is retained. And then they are returned safely to the biosphere when they are no longer in use. In a circular model, products are designed and developed with the next use in mind. So you can see it here in the little diagram comparison. As we mentioned before, linear economy is literally a straight line from take to make to use to waste. Recycling economy would consider recycling whatever is possible after the usage stage before the materials being eventually wasted. Circular economy is much more of a widespread network, and also it engages not only manufacturers with designers, but also brings in consumers as active force in transforming the fashion. And the ultimate goal is that in circular economy and in circular fashion, we don't generate waste. Of course, this is at the moment more of an ideal, but there are already many initiatives who are trying to work within this concept. Looking closer at it, basically at the core of concept of circular fashion, we have an understanding that there are two types of materials. We have biological materials, and then we have technical materials. Biological materials can be considered as ingredients or materials that can infinitely become part of biosphere again and again. Technical materials, or often called technical nutrients, should in theory be materials that can infinitely cycle within our recycling systems. Therefore, the cycle works in a way where we manufacture materials and products, we retail and sell them to the customer, consumer or our customer uses it, but also puts an extra effort to make sure that the garments are used for as long as possible, that they are being repaired and maintained, and when the consumer doesn't need the garment any longer, rather than disposing them into the waste stream, better option or option before that would be to recirculate them within maybe a different group of users first. Once these garments are really no longer in the use, we would ideally try to make them a part of a compost, whether an industrial or a home compost, where they can safely biodegrade and become part of the biosphere. We can't really say that, at the moment, most of the textile fibers do not constitute major nutrient for the soils, but at least they are safe to biodegrade. When it comes to technical materials, a scenario would initially be similar. So we would manufacture a material, then a product, then retail it to the customer. The customer tries to cycle and reuse the material and the garment for as many cycles as possible. And when the garment or the product is no longer usable, no longer possible to be recycled, then it would go to a recycling facility where it can be recycled into material of the initial value. There's often, I think, not enough distinction between two terms, which is recycling and downcycling. Recycling, basically the aim of recycling is to bring the material to its initial state where it has the same value, the same structure, whereas downcycling, basically, which is what usually happens with common plastics, is they are downgraded to a lower grade of the material. The principles of circular fashion can be separated into different stages. As you can see, many of the principles touch directly upon the design process. To mention all of them, within design process, it is design with purpose, design for longevity, design for resource efficiency, design for biodegradability, and design for recyclability. You can see that designer actually does have a lot of decisions on his or her shoulders that have ultimately the largest impact for the life cycle of the product. For the sourcing stage, source and produce locally, source and produce without toxicity, source and produce with efficiency, source and produce with renewables. When it comes to production, source and produce with good ethics, provide services to support longer life, which is, I think, something that we've been seeing recently a little more with brands all over the world offering their repair and mending services, offering recollection of the old products in that you can change for the new ones, or at least there's the collection point. And of course, reuse, recycle, or compost all the remains. For the past decade, we have seen many interesting initiatives within circular fashion. Many of them also come from India. We can mention the different approaches. One of them is to reuse, which basically means to prolong life of a product for as long as possible. You might be familiar with the concept of swap shops or swap events that have been popularized over the past couple of years. This event serves for a group of people to bring their old clothes and exchange them with themselves, because fashion is often not based on something that we really need and something that is really functional, but rather on our tastes and moods. And therefore, the idea of owning something new and getting something new doesn't necessarily depend on the fact that the clothes has to be brand new, rather on the feeling that I'm getting something that I didn't have before. Therefore, swap shops have been quite effective. From the brands, we can mention Indian brand called the Bodemans. It basically focuses on collecting vintage pieces from all around the world, handpicking them, and bringing them on one big online platform where the idea is each piece is unique and curated with love, and we can prolong the life of good quality vintage clothes. Many companies have been adopting approach to recycle their materials. It differs, whether the material is of synthetic origin or of the natural fiber origin. We've been seeing more of an initiatives towards recycling synthetic materials mostly. For example, I will mention one brand from India called Pani, which is a swimwear with high-end body positive swimwear, all made specifically for Indian women's bodies. Their swimsuits are made from a material called Econyl, which is fabric upcycled from nylon fishing nets and other plastic waste found in the ocean. To mention some of the natural fibers recycling initiatives, I can tell you about the company or textile manufacturer called Evnru, which has developed a chemical recycling technique that turns cotton scraps into new cellulosic yarn. Recycling, of course, is a process of reducing a product back to its basic material level and reprocessing those materials and using them in new products, components, and materials. The materials that we've seen being recycled recently a lot is, for example, PET. There have been a lot of initiatives to collect PET bottles and transform them, basically recycle them into polyester yarns. Big brands such as Adidas and Nike has also adapted this approach. Recycling PET can be done mechanically and chemically. Just to tell you a bit about the difference, mechanical recycling is taking plastic bottle, washing it, shredding it, and then turning it into polyester chip, which then goes through traditional fiber making process. Chemical recycling is taking a waste plastic product and returning it to its original monomers, which are indistinguishable from virgin polyester. Another approach, which is, I think, extremely popular, especially in India, from what I can register from past couple of years, is the approach for upcycling. Upcycling basically means, or is the difference between upcycling and recycling is, with upcycling, you aim to increase the value of material or product by employing creative intervention or exclusive design maybe, and in some way increase the value of the recycled material or of the discarded material. There are many brands within India who are working on this principle. I will mention, for example, I Was a Sari, which is a brand from Mumbai, working with, as they call it, pre-loved saris. So they go around different flea markets in Mumbai and collect old saris, which they then transform into an array of products ranging from homeware, accessories, and garments. A big platform for all brands working with upcycling in fashion is Refash, which promotes and retails products that are made out of post-industrial, pre-consumer, and post-consumer waste. Basically, any material, product, or piece that has reached the end of its life can be used in a creative way to make new, beautiful, ready-to-use products. So Refash is an online platform where you can choose from different brands, and it lists thousands of products that have been upcycled from old garments and old materials. When we talk about, reducing wasted material in garment and apparel construction, we can not mention a zero waste approach, because how a product is constructed plays a large part in disassembly. Both in terms of materials used and the speed with which they can be then disassembled. Basically, put it plainly, fewer seams means that a larger piece of fabric can be recovered and fed into the circular system that allows for remanufacturing of the intact fabric and to create new products. And at the same time, it can probably reduce your labor costs. Roughly, it is estimated that roughly 15% of total fabric used by the fashion industry is wasted. Therefore, zero waste fashion movement emerged, and nowadays we see many brands internationally and locally who have been using this approach. You can see in the picture, you can see, for example, how it would work when it comes to construction of a garment such as a shirt. But you know, when we talk about zero waste, I already mentioned design for disassembly, which is a very important approach that can and should be adopted, especially by people working at the design stage. One of the key issues of recycling textiles is the prevalence of the blended fibers, which cannot currently be separated. For example, a polyester cotton blend is most well known. However, there's more than 78 fabrics, you know, with the same description, with the description of not being able to be separated effectively at recycling stage. And you know, even 1% of elastin included in a fabric, otherwise single fiber garment, can prevent it from being recycled. So more and more brands are now adopting fabric choices for monofiber, basically, garments. Another area where design for disassembly should be considered more is definitely footwear design. Footwear is one of the products with the grimmest environmental scenario, because none of it is essentially being recycled, and most of it is made out of synthetic materials that cannot be recycled. And if they can be recycled, then it's very difficult to separate, you know, different parts of the shoe from each other, because very often they are held together with very strong glues. There have been several projects and initiatives that try to address this problem as well. For example, British designer Stella McCarthy has created a shoe called the Loop Sneaker that is designed for recycling in particular. She's using clips rather than glue to attach the sole to the upper, which can be then recycled, which then can be separated and recycled. Similar approach has been adopted by a Czech designer, Marie Nina Václavková, who with her collection called Offcuts has used several synthetic offcut materials from footwear industry to create concept for shoe that can be easily separated. She's also using a type of joinery that you would normally find in wooden products, I imagine. Another approach, which is perhaps more connected to material, is cradle-to-cradle approach. Cradle-to-cradle basically means or has a similar definition to circular fashion or circular economy, but it was developed in 1990s by Dr. Michael Brongard and William McDonnell. It refers to production processes where products are developed for closed-loop systems in which every output ingredient is safe and beneficial either to biodegrade naturally or restore the soil, or to be fully recycled into high-quality materials for subsequent product generations, so-called technical nutrient. One of the companies from fashion industry adopting this approach quite nicely is a Swiss brand called the Bananatex. Bananatex has developed kind of a novel fabric out of abaca plant, or also called Manila hemp plant. It is a similar plant to banana family, but I think it doesn't bear fruit. It is grown purely for the fibers. Hence, they have joined their forces with local material manufacturers from Philippines and developed a special process for manufacturing a fabric that is biodegradable and basically doesn't have any coatings that would prevent it from becoming part of the biosphere at some point. And also their design for the accessories that they offer as products is considered to the last detail. Basically every feature of the product is made for disassembly, so that it's not easy. It's easy to separate the particular trimmings made from, for example, metal from the textile parts. So at the end of the life of the product, you can easily separate the two and send each to its way of becoming a new cycle. So these were a couple of examples of how we can face troubles that the fashion industry is currently facing. Of course, this is relatively new initiatives, and however it might seem, very logical and simply how the materials can and should circulate, of course, simple rules but complex world. So I only hope that we'll be able to start adopting the principles of circular fashion more and more. And very often when I do explain to different array of audiences principles and approaches in circular fashion, I get questions. So I decided to mention some of them and answer some of them already here. One of the questions that come very often from the manufacturer is, does it make sense to follow circular fashion business-wise? And I think it does. Not only is a necessity from the environmental point of view, but as I mentioned, the consumer pool in the market is changing these days. We are getting millennials, and millennials, 57% of millennials are actually willing to pay more for sustainable brands because of their values and their desire to treat the world right. Integrity, therefore, does matter for a brand and is an influential aspect of purchase decision-making. A different term has been coined for a market segment that's on the rise for the past decade, called the LOHAS. The LOHAS are basically is a segment of consumers that are somehow more conscious and make more conscious choices, which means they really take the effort to find out whether the brand is sticking to their mottos, whether it is transparent enough to show that the data is valid, and only if all the boxes are ticked, they will trust the brand and they will become a customer. Another question.
Hi, Suzanne. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
This is Mudrika this side.
Okay.
So I think we are a little bit pushed on time.
Okay.
And it would be really lovely if you can just tell us a little bit about your own product, which is coming from your own company. It would be lovely to hear that before we wind up.
Sure. I am one slide away from that.
Sure,
Okay.
please continue.
All right. Okay, so maybe we'll leave the questions to after the session, and I'll move on because of the time. My journey to circular fashion have been influenced by two things. One of them has been a growing collection of my mother from 1980s and 1990s clothes piling up in our home wardrobes. And I realized, with fashion, very often, as I mentioned, we think everybody else shares our taste, but it's not necessarily true. And garments are being piled up in many people's closets and not being reused. Another very influential part in the transformation have been microbes. It's an area that I started researching during my MA. And it is during that time that I came across a material called bacterial cellulose. Bacterial cellulose is a natural compound which is grown by a particular type of bacteria called Acetobacter xylinum, which is able to feed which is able to live on different types of liquid media, and produces a mat of cellulose fibers. The difference between plant cellulose is that these fibers are of nano size, and it has a lot of potential, not only for my area, but also for medical, cosmetic, and food industries. What connects bacterial cellulose and what defines my practice these days are coconuts. If you didn't know, there's probably a lot more to coconuts than you thought. India happens to be the third largest cultivator of coconuts, and the connection between bacterial cellulose and coconuts is the fact that bacterial cellulose, the Acetobacter xylinum, the bacteria, happens to love water from mature coconut. It's one of its favorite media to live on. And when I came to India, I've been struck by the amount of coconut palms I saw everywhere. I knew from my research, from my previous research, that in Philippines, water from mature coconut is used making bacterial cellulose, and hence I joined forces with the time, and we decided to explore the potential of such of bacterial cellulose grown on this media for developing circular materials for fashion. And in 2018, we founded Malai together. We at Malai basically work with coconut processing units who find themselves with an excess of water from mature coconuts, because most of the coconut is harvested for the flesh or the shell. The water is usually discarded. Every day, a small coconut processing unit can dispose of more than 4,000 liters of this water per day. We started experimenting with different formulation for developing bacterial cellulose further, and we created a composite material which combines bacterial cellulose and natural fibers from banana stem, from hemp, and from sisa. And we make this material in form of sheets. Out of these sheets, different kinds of products can be made. The idea is we don't put anything anything synthetic or anything of toxic nature in the material, and therefore at the end of the life, it can be safely composted, even in a home compost, and therefore return back to nature. So Malai is therefore entirely plant-based. It doesn't contain anything of animal origin. It is compostable, but also can be recycled into paper products, since it basically contains different forms of cellulose fibers. Many call it, many compare it with leather. In comparison with leather materials, it would perhaps be a little more structural. And another specialty of ours is we use colors obtained specifically from natural plant-based dyes. Currently, we work mostly with manufacturers, brands, and designers developing fashion accessories. However, we have developed several concepts and several prototypes for footwear and interior products as well. To show you just a few examples of how Malai material can be used if it's not for the accessories. Footwear is one of the options. However, the material is not suitable yet for the manufacturing processes of footwear making. Therefore, we don't usually push this direction forward yet. We hope we'll be able to in the future. It has been successfully used for simple, furniture as upholstery for smaller areas or different types of furniture, and it's also favored quite a lot by stationery manufacturers. We have successfully organized also a crowdfunding campaign in 2019. And with this opportunity, we launched our own line of accessories. You can see some of them in the picture. We raised over 18,000 euros at a time, which helped us designing and building a custom-made dryer for our manufacturing processes. With the same collection, we joined the competition at the beginning of 2020 called the Circular Design Challenge Award, which is, I believe, one of the largest awards given in India to circular businesses working within fashion industry. In 2019, we also were awarded Edida Award, which is an award given by a magazine called Elle Decoration. We won in a category of Talent of the Year, and 2020 actually have not been so bad for us award-wise. We also got already mentioned Vegan Fashion Award from PETA for the best vegan leather. Winning this award, however, it happened in quite an unfortunate year, has been quite an interesting experience for us, and it also brought us to be able to develop another collection of accessories that we had a chance to present at the LACME Fashion Week earlier in 2020. I think it was October. So we are still at beginning of our journey, but we hope to. We have had quite good feedback, and I think a lot of people, whether globally or locally, appreciate our commitment to circular fashion. We hope we can continue to grow and develop our materials further. Not to keep it too long, thank you for your attention, and hope to see you sometimes later. Thank you.
Thank you, Susanna, for those very fascinating insights. And here we were thinking that buying cotton clothes is a great earth healthy choice. And we stand corrected. Thank you so much. And
there's
now
a lot more. So, yeah.
And now I will call on Dr. Mudrika Khandelwal and to give a quick introduction about her. Dr. Mudrika is an associate professor in the Department of Material Science and Metallurgical Engineering at IIT Hyderabad. She works in the areas of antimicrobial materials, controlling infectious diseases, materials for energy storage, environmental remediation, and sustainable nanofibrous cellulosic materials. She holds a master's in technology from IIT Bombay and a doctorate from the University of Cambridge, UK. Her work has received the Gandhian Young Technological Innovation Award in 2016. She's a fellow of Indian National Young Academy of Sciences and a member at National Academy of Sciences, India. She's also the recipient of the Young Engineer Award from Indian National Academy of Engineers and NASI Young Scientist Award. May I invite you, Dr. Mudrika, for a roundup on innovation possibilities on sustainable living.
Thank you so much. Let me just quickly share my screen. Priya, could you confirm if I'm audible and visible and the screen is shared?
Yes, you are, Dr. Mudrika.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So after Suzanne's work, where she could talk about her own personal journey about creating sustainable fashion, I want to just take our audience through some of the basic concepts and jargons while we are approaching and trying to, get into the race of sustainability and circularity. Some of those things I think Suzanne already spoke about, but let me just give you a flavor of it in a much more fundamental way. So already introduced, yeah. So quickly, just to tell you about my brief background so that you can connect with me better. So I was born in a place called Nagda in Madhya Pradesh. Then I lived most of my life in Jaipur with mostly doctors and engineers around me. Then I really first tasted what engineering was at IIT Bombay, did my PhD at Cambridge, and back I am to India at IIT Hyderabad as a faculty in metallurgy and material science. So when I look at commodities, when I look at fashion, when I look for anything around me, it's the materials that I'm mostly focusing on. I've also incubated 2 startups, and one of them looks at recycled polystyrene fabric to create. So because polystyrene is nothing but thermocol and it's non-biodegradable. I'll talk about some of these terms also by biodegradability and things. But polystyrene is non-biodegradable and definitely one of the most important polymers around, especially when we are looking at packaging materials for or online shopping and stuff. So how to recycle them? Because recycling is always not a very easy way to do it or the most environment friendly way to do it. The other thing that we have looked at is how to use the nature, the herbaceuticals for treatment of various diseases. Anyhow, so let's get into what I want to talk about today. It's the circularity, the sustainability. What does it mean? So most of us do enjoy rice, right? But rarely do we think about the burden of energy or carbon that it carries. And I do not mean the calories, by the way. When I talk about rice, I'm saying it's been sown, irrigated, harvested, transported, cooked, and so on. And all of these processes are very energy consuming. I wouldn't say equally energy consuming, but definitely they do require energy. They do leave behind a carbon footprint. What do I mean by embodied energy and carbon footprint? Energy simply is the amount of energy, amount of joules, amount of calories that are required to do that process. And carbon footprint is basically the equivalent emissions or equivalent amount of carbon dioxide or greenhouse gases that are emitted in those processes. Why are those important? Simply because I know most of you might know it, but just to brush up our fundamentals, we have an ozone layer which protects us from the ultraviolet radiations of the sun. And if it gets defective, it's going to be very bad and detrimental for the earth, for us and everybody. And hence we are really worried about puncturing that layer that is around us. And one of the contributor for puncturing that layer are the greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide. Anyhow, let's get forward and get a little bit more practical rather than theoretical. Now, if I want to carry rice to my house, I have to transport it. And if my house is not, I don't live on the ground floor, but I do live in a, let's say, a multi-story building, and I have to transport it all the way up to my floor, that adds additional energy because you have to carry it up. You may carry it up, but you typically would take an elevator to carry it up. So that's an additional amount of energy that goes into the consumption of the rice. The idea is very simple. Everything we do, there is energy associated with it. There is a carbon footprint associated with it. Even if, we are enjoying a cup of tea, I mean, online webinars allow us to have a cup of tea all the time while you're listening to me. Perhaps it's tea time as well. Cultivation, processing, packaging, transportation, using it, cooking it, all of these requires energy. Acquiring energy is not bad, but where is that energy coming from? It's either coming from the burning of coal, or if we are lucky, from some renewable resources. However, even if it's coming from renewable resources, it's getting transported through certain lines which would need certain materials, and manufacturing of those materials will need another energy. So actually it's almost impossible to avoid usage or consumption of energy, or or reduction, or avoiding any impact on the environment. It's almost impossible, right? However, what lies with us is to make the right choice. For example, if I want to light up my room, I could have three choices: an incandescent bulb, a CFL, a LED, and it depends on me what choice do I make, because my choice will determine how much impact it has on the environment. They all serve the same purpose to the same quality. Same purpose, but different impact. So you might think about, why am I talking about disconnected things? The idea is to awaken ourselves at every step while we have these things brushed up in our mind. Let's say I want an ice cream. I don't like an ice cream, but let's say I want an ice cream. I have two choices to go to: location A and location B. One is closer to me, one is farther to me. Going farther may have, let's say, another benefit also, but going closer versus farther, closer will have a lower footprint, lower impact on the environment. Now, how do you get there? You could ride a bike, then that's extremely all right, that's good. But if you drive a car, of course, there's going to be associated emissions, consumption of petrol, and so on. So the first message here is, we cannot avoid making an impact on the environment, but can we have a minimal impact on the environment by making the right choices? For example, this is from a source. Let's say traveling from Los Angeles to New York. Unfortunately, when you look for all this kind of data online, we tend to get more of American data, which is quite unfortunate, because we still haven't started really looking at these concepts in a more fundamental and theoretical way, which is fine, because there is a reason to it why we're not looking at, because probably we're already quite imbibing that. Anyways, we'll come to that point as well. So let's say one has to travel from LA to NYC. You can have various modes of transport, and every mode of transport will have an associated carbon emitted per person. And carbon emitted, typically we say that you have to plant trees for every unit of carbon that you generate. So all of these would be equivalent to number of trees that would be needed in that for that particular consumption of the carbon. So one can see coach bus versus a car versus a train versus a flight versus a light SUV truck. We can see the impact on the environment would be very different, right? So I urge every decision that we make, or at least some decisions that we make, if you have choices, can we think about which one will have a lesser impact on the environment? With this also came the idea of 100-mile diet. So this is the cover page of a book that's called 100-mile diet, and the other one is the image of the reality show that was around this concept. What this meant was to use or consume the food that is produced within 100 miles of us. Why? To minimize the impact of transportation, to minimize the need for storage, and so on. So ultimately, to minimize the impact on the environment that our diet has. So one can see that these concepts have been quite very nicely uh, developed into practices and lifestyles. But it's just that when we are doing a business and we are worried about getting into the race of sustainability, we actually don't look at every step. We take a lot of things for granted. So the message here is reduce material and energy consumption. That's the first R. Reduce material and energy consumption. So this is particularly a very interesting thing for me. And Suzanne was also talking about upcycling and how Indian culture is, how Indian families are. So let's say we talk about a cloth. So there is a raw material, manufacturing, packaging, distribution, use, and disposal. So if there is a single use, and then you discard it. But very rarely does it happen actually. If it's my cloth, and if I don't more want to use it, I might give it to my sister, my daughter, or somebody in the family. If not the family, somebody who is willing to take it. So multiple times the same thing is being used for the primary purpose. So it's being reused. It may be, refurbished to be made into reused, but it's being reused for the same purpose. What could also happen is, if it has been already reused or there are no willing people to use it, you can convert it into other products like making a mop at home, face masks, using it as a handkerchief, and so on. So we do see the whole beautiful tradition that has been there in our society of reusing and refurbishing it. So what we are essentially doing is, before this product can go to the grave, we are extending its life. And that's the whole idea behind sustainability. How long and how much can you use something before you dispose it of? What's wrong with disposing something with? We'll talk about that. What's wrong with something being disposed? Sorry, I had to put it in a horizontal way, but don't worry about it. This is just to tell us the carbon footprint of a pair of jeans, for example. 13 kilos of carbon dioxide are released in the environment for one pair of jeans. 2000 liters of water are used. 10 liters of chemicals, products, and dyes are used. You wash it every day. Of course, there is a consumption associated with that, and so on. So the point here is, with every process, with that single pair of jeans also, there's a lot of material and energy investment that is going on. And that is coming from somewhere else, which is definitely affecting the environment. So the idea is, something is born, something is produced. Before it goes to the grave, how much can you use it? So there are different types of analysis that one can do, life cycle assessment that one can do. But the important point uh, for us as people who are practicing things every day is to enhance the life of everything. I'm not saying at the cost of quality or safety. Okay, so that's another aspect of it, which is again to do with sustainability. So second message here is reuse, repurpose if we can't reduce. Last message is to recycle, and recycle is very fashionable today. However, I am not a firm believer of recycling as long as you can reuse or refurbish or repurpose, because recycling may also come with some additional energy intensive processes. However, if there is no other option, this is one of the best ways to go ahead with it, because at least you are reducing the amount of generation need of the new material. So what are the issues with recycling? One has to segregate the waste, clean, quality of raw material generation has to be ensured, the variability will be there is additional energy input, but it does prevent generation of additional waste. India itself generates about 1.5 lakh metric tons of solid waste every day. Yeah. Now, why is generation of waste a problem? That waste has to go somewhere. And typically they would go to landfills. But all the landfills are already full. So where are they going to go? And then it would lead to water pollution, air pollution, and so on. So the third message is recycle. And if we go a step ahead, reuse, repurpose, recycle, a step ahead is circularity. So what is generated from your first cycle acts as a raw material for the next product. A circularity. So there is a linear chain, recycling chain, and then there is a circularity. And circularity means that you need to take care of designing in such a way, production should be in that way, distribution, consumption, collection, recycling, everything has to be nicely synchronized. But it's not unachievable. There are big initiatives within the country by big giants to look at this. So ultimately, the thing is, before you discard anything, rethink. Refuse to discard or buy a new thing if that is already working. Reduce, repair, reuse, and recycle. These are some of the important things which are not necessarily only true for everyday habits. The idea behind talking about all this is simply to say that as a businesswoman, as an entrepreneur, I'm assuming that's who I'm addressing to, you can actually think about every steps in your company and think about how to bring in that element of sustainability. Let's look at very quickly next 2-3 minutes some of the things that have emerged post COVID. Okay, and what are the ambiguity? Just 3 cases I want to pinpoint. So first thing after COVID was the lockdown. Lockdown means closed borders, which led to the need for local availability of things, right? A lot of businesses sprung up. So this led to reduction in transportation, right? So when we were importing or the borders were open, there was probably much more transportation. So yes, we took a step towards sustainability. However, because there was a lack of competition, many a times we did also see low quality products cropping up. So there is a ambiguity here. There is sustainability in terms of environment, but there is no sustainability in terms of its utility. Second case study, because of the lockdown, because of the risk of infection and avoiding contact with other people, there is a need for self-reliance, which has led to reduction in employment and more automation. So while it is sustainable from again environment perspective, it's not socially sustainable. Last thing, we are all scared of viral infections. We want to get rid of virus. We saw emergence of lots of antiviral commodities. Question is, are they needed? What about other good organisms? In order to kill that one corona virus, COVID-19 virus, are we killing the good ones too, which are ultimately going to be very detrimental to our health? I'm not going to details of that. But so are there also antiviral plywood, for example? Are we not unnecessarily adding the need for materials and energy for something which may not be needed? Is it really sustainable? So with that, I just want to say that sustainability stands on the pillar of social, environmental, and economic. And the balance between the three is absolutely important in order to ensure that the sustainability or the approach is actually sustainable. So let me just end here. We reduce, we reuse, we recycle, and along with other extra R's that are there, because what goes around does come around. It's all circular. So the takeaway from what I spoke in probably last 15-20 minutes is that now we understand what is the meaning of carbon footprint. We understand to some extent what are the various factors that affect my impact on the environment. Why should you emphasize on reducing consumption? reusing something, and why and when to make the choice of recycle. I'm not saying don't recycle. Please do. Whatever is easiest and whatever is can be done, we should do. And what is sustainability? What are the pillars? And ultimately, what is circularity? So thank you. With that, I would like to thank thank you for that initiative, Vicky Flo. And I hand it over back to Ms. Priya. Thank you so much.
Thanks for those very invaluable tips, Dr. Mudrika. It is relieving to know that the path to sustenance need not be one of abstinence, but it could be a win-win proposition that can be created to build a sustainable future. Thank you so much. Our last speaker for the day is Dr. Surya Kumar. Dr. Surya is faculty in the Department of Mechanical Engineering at IIT Hyderabad. He holds a BTech and MTech from IIT Madras and a PhD from IIT Bombay. His research interests include CAD/CAM, 3D printing, and the broad theme of manufacturing. He's involved in developing the unique engineering art course at IIT Hyderabad. He's a recipient of the IIT Hyderabad Excellence in Teaching Award and Excellence in Research Awards. Dr. Surya will take us through the startup support possible for women entrepreneurs in the fashion and jewelry industries. Welcome, Dr. Surya.
So can you please confirm I'm audible, visible, and my screen is visible?
Yes, absolutely. Everything.
Okay, all right. Okay, wonderful. So thank you. I think, I mean, my task is clearly cut out. We have wonderful speakers before me, both giving you a overview of what is sustainability and also from their own experiences talking about what are the various, sustainable measures which can be done, or examples that they have practiced and implemented commercially also. Okay, so I am the faculty in charge for Incubation Center at IIT Hyderabad. So I'll take this opportunity to briefly touch upon what are the various structural or organizational support systems available for supporting incubation and entrepreneurship activities. And I'm hopeful that the members here will make use of the opportunities. So I will divide my talk into 3 sections. So firstly, essentially, I will briefly talk about what are the incubation activities which are at IIT Hyderabad, what are the various schemes and what are the various, programs, etc. Secondly, I will briefly just give you a detail, this thing about government schemes about incubation support. Frankly, I'm not really familiar myself there, so I will just post you to some websites where I think you can dig it into more information. Lastly, I would also give some tech and small business examples. So because I come from mechanical engineering and particularly from manufacturing background, and typically many times the usual apprehension is, look, technological intervention into businesses is always a costly proposition. Okay, so I will try to talk and give some examples where yes, it's not really always a high ball game. It is affordable and it is within reach and easy to implement also. Okay, so I will try to talk about some examples in that context. So this is broadly I would cover in the today's session. So firstly, about incubation activities at IIT Hyderabad. So we have a very vibrant entrepreneurship ecosystem at IIT Hyderabad. So we have, ESL way back in the beginning. Okay, we have a minor program, a incubation program, a research park, a technology accelerator, etc. So let's go on by one. So we have what we call as a minor in entrepreneurship activity. So this is a 12 credit course wise program, which is meant for our BTech students typically and our master students also. The unique thing about this program is none of us teach any course there. Okay, so the whole idea is entrepreneurship should be taught by practicing entrepreneurs. So we make sure all the courses in this program are taught by practicing businessmen and practicing successful businessmen into the commercial world. Okay, so that's essentially, so this kind of gives from the foundation or the coursework point of view, how about to go with the entrepreneurship. The next is we have also a incubation ecosystem at IIT Hyderabad, where we have 3 incubators. 2 of them are very specific for the program. So we have Fabulous Chip Design, which is mainly about electronic chip fabrication. We have CHFE, which is purely focused on healthcare entrepreneurship. And we also have ITIC, where we are, technology, open. Okay, so so different fields of technology, deep techs are welcome in our context. Okay, so the idea here is that if you are a individual who have an idea, okay, our role as incubator system is to make that idea, help the individual to make that idea into a commercial process or commercial product. And to sustain them as a vibrant business proposition. So because typically it is mostly designed with our students in mind. So there may be some students who are purely doing their MTech thesis or their PhD thesis and come upon something which is very valuable, okay, technically. So our role is to convert that technical idea into a business and a value proposition. So we handhold them in the remaining process, etc. These are our current incubators at ITIC. We have, so from electronics, from computer science, from fabrication, from biomedical, we have various teams working in different technologies. One of the, also we are running an accelerator program where if you're already a startup, this program is mainly to encourage the startups get more traction, get more funding, or kind of mature into a more successful product. So this is funded by DST, Government of India. And similarly, we also have another program called Nidhi Accelerator. So this is beautiful program. Okay, so basically, if you have an idea, okay, and if you think this idea has technical value, okay, no other details, no other this thing, okay, there is a presentation and directly there is a funding possibility of up to 10 lakhs, which is possible in the Nidhi Prayas program. Again, so this is purely grant. So that means, so we don't take any this thing, we don't take any equity from you, we don't take any shares from you, or it's not a loan, okay. But yes, so it is an open process, it is a competitive process, but definitely for people who think, they have a very prospective idea, which is of value, okay. So I would encourage people to consider and apply under this scheme also. And once they are selected in this scheme, the remaining fabrication facilities of IIT Hyderabad, the mentorship, etc. also is provided to all our incubators. Similarly, it's also, we have a similar program called Mighty Type 2, which is more focused on electronics and communication, ICT related startups. So a similar theme, so we give grant to them, we give incubation support, we give the lab support, etc. And another program we have also recently launched is with NMDC on deep tech solution. So it has 2 aspects. One is where you are a startup who gives some funding up to the order of 25 lakhs here. Okay. And also, if you're not clear, but have a strong entrepreneurship spirit, we do have a fellowship program where one can apply, okay, and then being given space and mentorship, etc. at IIT Hyderabad, can nurture the enthusiasm into a more concrete idea and a business proposition and a commercial value. So these are both for companies or startups, also for enthusiastic individuals who want to do big and do great in the startup ecosystem. We have FabC incubator, which is purely about electronic chip and fabless chip design. And we also have CHFE, that is Center for Healthcare Entrepreneurship. So where, so people working in dental field, people working in biomedical devices, etc., can both are given fellowship as well as seed funding to make it big. And in fact, we had quite a number of products coming from this incubator in terms of the COVID related. So we had face masks, we have face gowns, we had respirator designs, etc. Where, there was a fair set of active products which came up in the CHFE ecosystem. And we have good number of startup companies from the CHFA. And these are the facilities we have. So we have good conferencing facilities, maker lab or fabrication facilities with us. And apart from, we acting as a window to the rest of the IIT Hyderabad ecosystem for all the research facilities, etc. Of course, we can't, so we are facilitators there. Okay, so the remaining thing is done by the respective lab there. But at least we act as a window where we kind of try to support our incubators and startups to get the technical and the mentorship support they need. And we have a fairly good large technology incubation park which is under construction. So it's almost 1.5 lakh square feet dedicated building for incubation, which will be hopefully ready by this summer. And these are all our areas, focus areas. So by and large, we are tech agnostic. Okay, so that means all deep tech areas we welcome. And I think, now going into the government schemes for incubation, okay, I don't want to make it a list of government schemes, okay. My only interest is to emphasize that there is a lot of dedicated government schemes which are happening, which specifically support women incubation and startup activities. And post-COVID, in fact, there is a much significant weightage or much significant focus being given to these schemes. So I think, so there is a beautiful website called Startup India, and there is a Startup India policy, there is a Startup India, awards and etc., which also happen. And all the related schemes, all the related policies, everything are very nicely and very, are in an organized manner captured in this website. So in fact, they have a dedicated web space for female founders. I like that idea. Okay, so many times we call women entrepreneurs, but so female founders. Okay, so where they are specifically, talking about what are the startup policies for women, state-wise, each state, what is the policy, each, or what are the funding sources from different locations, etc. A very beautiful collation of all the related information available from the government support. And they even maintain a very nice blogs for women startups from different parts of life. Okay, so I think, so my intention is only here to just be a pinpointer that look, yes, there are lots and lots of activities and schemes available. And there is, in fact, many times what we have realized is we have more seats and more offerings and less number of applicants these days. In fact, so last time we had openings for 10 applications to fund 10 people, but we ended up only funding 3 people. So, I think, so, and the reason is many of us are not aware of the scale of the support system which is available, and we typically think, sarkari type. Okay, but I think no, the culture is changing. Okay, and there is a deep realization and a emphasis on various, central, state institutions, IITs in different spheres to encourage entrepreneurship and startup culture. And I'm hopeful that the participants kind of make use of these opportunities. So I think I'll come to the last point of it, the tech for small businesses. This is something which is close to my heart, where, so because it's directly related with my research practices also. Okay, so usually the idea here is always, if it is tech, it's always a big deal. It's always, high-fi stuff, or a lot of, money is involved, or a lot of support is involved, or a lot of training is involved, etc., etc. Okay, but not necessarily. I will give some examples in our theme, okay, for today's theme, that is essentially jewelry and fashion, okay, where you can kind of use the small and the affordable, easy tech solutions which are available, examples of such systems, okay. And the purpose is to kind of convey that, look, hey, it is possible. It's not a big deal. All of us can actually use the tech tools that are disposable today for using. So if you look at it today, there are two major trends in fabrication, I would say. Okay. One is essentially the mass customization. Okay. So it's neither mass production. So gone are the days where you used to produce 100 different types of same shirt, same pant, or same shoes in tons. I don't think anybody is willing to buy them now. Okay. But at the same time, pure customization 101 is also simply impossible because it's not easy to scale up. So you don't have, for example, unique designs or unique footwear or unique rings, okay, where it is customized for each and every one. Okay. So I think, so the balance today or the trend today is in terms of what we call as mass customization. And I will show some examples of how that's kind of concept is there. And the second is also the concept of digital fabrications, where it is affordable and easy to use machines are available today, where one can easily buy. You don't really need an engineering degree at all. So many of these tools are, for example, where a 10th class student can easily learn and operate. Okay, so that is essentially the kind of ease which is available today. So to give some examples, okay, so the whole idea is about digital tools for the fabrication. So this is an example of what we can say, yes, mass customization. So for example, so you are end of the day buying a headphone, but each part of the headphone is customized by the customer in the website, and he or she can kind of pick to one's own nature what exactly are they looking at and make an order. Okay, so so this is an example, but at the same time, it's essentially mass produced. So all the items are mass produced. You don't, you're not individually making each of them. So this is a good example. So this is a website where you go, you make your own Hawaii chappal. A very simple process. Okay, but the point here is that you feel, yes, so the user is picking, the user is making the product. Okay, it's not just he's buying the product, he or she is making the product, and that makes it a lot more valuable for a user. Okay, so so that experience that, yes, look, this product is designed by me, this product is chosen by me, and this product. Okay, so there are 100 different websites or 100 different possibles today. Okay, so this is a very simple example. Okay, so you choose your strap pair, you choose your base, you choose your this thing, and you go and you order. Okay, so this is one example from Shapeways about 3D printed headpieces and crowns. Okay, so this is a example from the Western Hemisphere. So the fashion sense is little different from the Indian context, but at least the point here is how you can customize. Okay, so and this is a team, for example, which came up with mass customization of headgears. Okay, so different types of headgears or head fashion, and all of them are actually, so they are unique. Okay, but they're easily scalable or easily reproducible. So they are combinations of small subsets. So similarly, this is another website. This is one of my favorites. Okay, so it's a website called Encode Ring. Okay, so what you do here is go to this website. Okay, you can upload a small audio file to the website, and the audio file is converted into a WAV file or a visually this thing. Okay, and you can create your own. So they will make from the small audio file you have uploaded either a pendant or a ring or a chain, etc. Okay, so you see, essentially it can be a simple ring. Okay, so this file is actually a audio rendering of whatever is the audio file you have updated. So this is mass produced, but each and every product you are making there is unique, and so it is essentially gives the customer that feeling that, look, hey, this is my own product and I designed it or I made it. And the point is, it's not necessarily articraft or handicrafts. Okay, these are mass produced, these are made by tech solutions which are automated codes, etc., which are possible. Okay, so this is another example of taken from Shapeways. Okay, so again, so the idea here is you are able to design your ring. The customer is able to design his or her ring is a sum total of small entities, and you can jig together various combinations, this plus this, etc., and make your own shape or concept. Okay, and but after that, the process is completely automated. It's not like, I mean, so this customization is not like making your beads. Okay, I mean your beads or your anklets, etc. This is mass produced with tech solutions. And similarly, there are a lot of easy apps today which are available. So there are beautiful websites. Shapeface is one of my favorites. So you go to the website. Okay, so you have 100 different 3D printing apps where, for example, you can blend together different letters. You can blend together different pendant. Okay, so you can create your own memo or pendant or a custom ring. Okay, or I mean cipher chain, okay, or your name, okay, and all without having to know much of CAD or without having to know much of any other this thing. It is almost like I mean just like you're surfing your Amazon or Flipkart and fine tuning. So these interfaces are so easy and so scalable. And after that, what happens in the background is these products are then made into technical. So the CAD models or the STL files, the 3D printing, everything happens automated in the background. Okay, but it gives a sense of participation into the customer. And I mean, so again, so it's fairly easy. So you start with your pattern, you customize your ring, and you get it part. And I mean, in a week's time, you have the ring which is posted out to your house ready. Okay, so that's kind of the tech solutions which are possible today and running today. So this is another example of a simple handbag. Okay, so where you select your strap, where you select your main part, where you select your anchor. Okay, everything is again, as I said, tailored and customized from you. And these are examples of all what we call as mass customization. You have your own design your own dream heels, for example. Okay, so you pick your heel height, you pick your this thing. Okay, and again, once you do it on the website, it just posts you out, and you don't select from a list of 100 or, I mean this thing in a website. Okay, you make your own footwear, you make your own bag. Okay, and the solutions today are possible and available that makes it possible for you in a easy manner. Okay, so I mean, similarly, you can make your own sweatshirts, your own, wearables, etc. Okay, so what we have at IIT Hyderabad is one such course called Engineering Art. So the motto of this course is essentially how you can use the digital fabrication tools, and more importantly, which are affordable digital fabrication tools. So I mean, none of these technologies cost you a lot. Okay, they're all affordable, and they're affordable, one, and two, easy to adopt and easy to learn. Okay, it doesn't always need that you need a master's from IIT to use these machines. Okay, so as I said, many of these are where a 10th class student also can comfortably use these technologies without much of a learning curve. Okay, so and the pictures you see on the background are actually made by our own IIT students using this course. Okay, so they are fairly artistic in nature. Okay, so for example, if you see, this is one of the Lord of the Rings tree in the center. Okay, but and I mean, if you really want to make it, you need to be a great artist. Okay, but what we teach in this course is, look, if you know your engineering properly, okay, you can use it properly to create good artwork also. Okay, so how you can do that? Okay, so these are some. So what we call it as a DIY culture or as a do-it-yourself culture. Okay, so where I mean, so the whole ecosystem is about fabrication in a modular, in a simple manner with emphasis on the digital tools. So we teach them laser cutting, engraving, silicon molding, digitization, path planning, etc., etc. Okay, so we have some good amount of small CNCs where you can modify them according to your requirement. Okay, so different shapes, different combinations can be made. Okay, so and similarly, we also have, for example, automatic plotters, automatic stitching tools are also available. Okay, so for example, so I mean, so you give a CAD model, or if you, for example, give a drawing. Okay, so here is a tool which can automatically replicate it, not with printer, but with a pen and paper. You pick your pen and it will kind of replicate it as if you are writing it. Okay, so that's kind of the technology possible today. So if you're painting, okay, so you can make the toolpath for one painting, and here is, you can do it for n number of times, multiple number of times very easily. And so, for example, this is a custom-made memorabilia he given when Hariprasad Chaudhary was coming to IIT Hyderabad. So he wanted to, I mean, I'm sure he has lots of gifts. Okay, so I wanted to at least give him something which is personalized. Okay, so what we have done is essentially kind of make a small token where his picture was kind of engraved into the object. So it is a 3D object, and the point is, we don't need a artist. Okay, what I have done is just taken his simple 2D picture, okay, and was able to convert it into a 3D depth and a this thing, etc. And using simple free CAD tools, free and easy to use tools, etc. Okay, so this is, I mean, so point is, these are fairly possible and easy to adapt. Okay, so I mean, I think so. Similarly, we have I mean, a good laser cutter and engraver. Okay, so I mean, so students come with all fancy ideas. Okay, and we also have teach them how to do silicon molding, how to do epoxy molding. Okay, how to do patterning, etc. Okay, so how to kind of, for example, again the same Buddha statue. Okay, so how it can be created in 3D. Okay, from a simple 2D image. So all I want is just a normal JPEG picture. Okay, and how you can convert it into a really 3D scenario, etc. Okay, so this is again another example of how we teach them CNC engraving. Okay, so I mean, wood cutting, etc. And so these are essentially the various tech possibilities also. Okay, the intention in kind of describing these things is that, yes, I mean, it's fairly possible and fairly easy for one to really, I mean, adopt the tech solutions and use them. Okay, so I think with that I will kind of summarize my talk. Okay, so I think, I mean, so both you are welcome for IIT Hyderabad. We have a very I mean, vibrant ecosystem of incubation at IIT Hyderabad. So we always welcome serious entrepreneurs and startups. And I'm sure, I mean, it's not just our local phenomena, but it is a global phenomena and at least a pan-Indian phenomena where the ecosystem and the startups support is growing in the nationwide. So I hope more and more entrepreneurs realize, I mean, take support. And also, as I said, the barriers are no longer high. The barriers are fairly easy and affordable and easy to adopt also. Okay, so with that, I would kind of conclude the session, and thanks. So thanks to our organizers for helping out with this. Let me just see where I am. Okay, yes.
Thank you, Dr. Surya. It's reassuring to see the amount of support that's available for women entrepreneurs. It's up to us now, I think, to correlate and generate value by connecting the various dots. EC member, Flow Incubation, Sarita Chilakapati, will step in now to moderate the Q&A session. Over to you, Sarita.
Thank you, Priya. I'm picking up some questions from the chat box. Am I audible, Priya?
Yes, you are, Sarita.
Okay. Okay. I'm picking up some questions from the chat box. So my first question is to Ms. Susanna. It asks about can existing or established businesses already in this field can actually utilize the same technology to get into the sustainable products using like, you know, Ms. Susanna has mentioned about using coconut for leather. So imagine there is a leather manufacturing unit and they want to replace that with the coconut raw material. Is it really possible?
I mean, I would say, you know, leather and our composite materials are two different categories of materials, although they compete in the same application. So I'm not sure if it would be necessarily a good replacement in terms of, you know, switching from one manufacturing to another. But I would encourage anyone, you know, who has a leather manufacturing industry and maybe feels concerned about the ecological impact of it to the environment, to actively seek ways how to improve, you know, on their end. There's a lot of research into greener processing of leather. There are many vegetable tanning processes that are, however, not completely without environmental impact, but at least they are less bad. However, if they want to, of course, set up a manufacturing unit specifically for coconut, so-called leather, it is possible, but I would not put the, two manufacturing, I would not necessarily say one can replace another. No, they are two different materials. However, we can compare their material properties and we can compete within the same application for material.
Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Anna. So you mean to say instead of 100% change, probably in a partial we can try to incorporate, right? That would at least.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. We always try to look at the material not from the perspective of, good and bad, but whether it fits for the application or it doesn't. So there are many applications where malai yet could not replace leather, which are more functional and require a high strength in high resistance to abrasion. So leather definitely does and will have place in the market and in products. The question is just how to make it better for the environment as well. Maybe it's a matter of scale of the problem as well.
Okay, that was very informative. Now my next question is to Ms. Professor Mudrika. Ms. Mudrika, how can we ensure that such sustainable products are used during the design and development stage itself?
Yeah. So I think that's a very important question, which I think Suzanne also highlighted during her talk, that at the design stage, we need to include. The first thing that I would say is when you think of a product, the first thing is to find out what are the various materials available to serve that purpose. And second, be bold enough to make a decision which may take a little bit longer, because many of the environmental friendly products are not always, processing friendly or, live up to the expectation of the consumers. It might take longer, but if you're really committed, it can come through. So I think similar story what Suzanne is doing, difficult to really compete with leather, I would say. But it's the will to really make sure that you do not deviate and get attracted by simply what people want. It's important what you want and what kind of product you want to deliver. That would be my answer.
Okay, thank you for your answer, Ms. Mudrika. And I think if all of you can, there's one question from the chat box. Ms. Archana Duseja mentions that she would like to know about the sustainable material and practices and would like to connect with you. Mr. Surya has given this answer. Are there something beyond this? There's stephanie.gineer.com. That's one website Professor Surya has shared. Beyond that, do you have anything more?
I shared about easy website, easy CAD learning. I think okay. Suzanne can talk more about easy, materials, I think.
Okay. Ms. Suzanne, would you like to take it over? Okay.
I don't, what was the question again, or what should I address?
The question is, one moment. It's about one member would like to know about more sustainable materials and practices. She would like to understand more. It's not just fashion or the leather product, but what are other products that can be replaced? Or probably if you can share your PPT, we'll share it to the member.
Sure, I can do that. I mean, there's a lot of, again, it's a question of good materials and bad materials. There is no such thing really. Of course, we've been eliminating materials that are obviously toxic and cause harm. But in many cases, it's a problem of scale. It's a problem of application of the material and use of material. So obviously, the materials that we are talking about most these days are materials such as already mentioned leather, different kinds of plastics. And, we can't say plastic is a bad material. Plastic is a wonderful material, and it has enabled us progress and prosper and everything around it. But, perhaps we can ask, is it good that we are using a material that takes enormous amounts of, energy, water, and takes hundreds of years to decompose for something that we use hardly, several months or maybe not even a year. Same is with the leather. It's an amazing material and it has enabled us to progress for thousands of years. We can't say, oh, leather is bad. No, there is, of course, no such thing, but we have to consider at what scale and using what technologies and processes we are manufacturing leather currently. And we also have to ask, do I need to use a material that has such a high cost in terms of environmental impact for a fashion item that I will likely stop liking or stop using, after a few years? No, we maybe are far away from making airplanes biodegradable, but why not making bags biodegradable? Who needs, something like that? So it's very often about mindset, and I think very often it's just a matter of convenience and what we are used to.
That's right. I agree with you. I think it's a mindset which has to change, and over a period, I think all of us will switch to eco-friendly materials. We have one question. I'm not addressing it specifically to anyone, but the question is, how do we make sure the consumer believes in the validity of having used sustainable materials? Ms. Mudrika, could you answer this?
Yeah. So I think also Archana has been trying to say a question which is similar to this. And okay, so everything unfortunately comes down to the cost.
Exactly.
And when one has to break the barrier of cost, it has to be broken down by knowledge. Now that knowledge could be of two things. One is to make someone conscious that this is how they are affecting the environment. Or secondly, it could be an advantage that you tell it to them, which is better as compared to the other alternative materials. Now we have to so basically it's the interplay of economy, a mindset in terms of what I want, and third is the knowledge. Unfortunately, many of us do not try to propagate the knowledge or increase the consciousness. We underestimate that our people will not understand the importance of it. It's just that we are not making enough effort for the same. So I feel we as and second, of course, we shouldn't really say that businesses do not want to go towards sustainability or they just want to make money. It's not the fact. It's the consumers which will drive the market. But I think there's some effort which is needed from the businesses side also to educate the consumers, maybe in collaboration with academia, which will definitely lead to a long-term change. Now, one more thing I want to highlight is that previously we were all open to reusing our clothes. I would take my mother's clothes, I would pass it on to my friends, or if somebody else's kids are born, you would give your kids garment to them. But today we think about it, how would it look? Why that question even comes to our mind. So I think it's a very good I would say intellectual growth of every society has plus forces and negative forces. It's the balance which is happening, and it's just the things like this what we are doing it today, we need to push them towards the positive side. So it's my answer is to create awareness and knowledge and not leaving hope in making that change.
Thank you, Professor Mudrika. I think that was well answered. So you're trying to connect economy as well as the planet Earth. Thank you so much. I think with this, we've come to a close to our session. So I think I can go ahead with my closing remarks. Yeah, thank you. So I would like to thank by saying today's session on sustainable living in the new normal has opened up the new window of opportunities for all of us. On behalf of Wikiflow Hyderabad, I would like to thank IIT Foundation Hyderabad for gracefully accepting our request to associate with them. We would like to thank the director of IIT Hyderabad, Professor B.S. Murthy, who was very instrumental in ensuring we take our association forward. Here, a special mention is to Dr. Surya, Dr. Mudrika, Dr. Som Datta for the constant support at every point of time. I would also like to thank Ms. Susanna for sharing her knowledge on sustainable products and developing a product which is used widely in our day-to-day lives. We hope this thought would drive most of our entrepreneurs to move in that direction and look at possibilities and come up with more sustainable products and save our planet Earth. My heartfelt thank you to our Pan-India members who have attended this session. Tomorrow, we also have a workshop on increasing your business in the online space with speakers from Tech Mahindra and a professor from IIM Bangalore. Please do try to attend this workshop as well. Thank you and see you all tomorrow. Goodbye.